On a vast plain as far as the eye could see, nothing grew but grass. Time passed and nothing new happened until the sky began to blacken. In the distance, a tornado came from over the hills to swoop down on the plain. Rain, thunder, and lightning bolts had brought down all the grass in the field. After a few hours, everything began to calm down, and a huge rainbow brought back the old peace. Everything seemed to be the same as at the beginning, until one day the wind noticed that a beanstalk was beginning to sprout in the middle of the plain. He thought that perhaps he had blown a beanstalk from the hills and brought it with him into that storm. The vine grew taller and taller, and pods began to form on its stem. As the years went by, the wind watched the beanstalk multiply to cover acres, and what was once just grass now became a sea of beanstalk as far as the eye could see. The wind blew, the pods withered, opened, aged, and the dead beans fell to the ground, then revived, sprouted, lived, multiplied. The wind blew, withered, aged and died, then revived again, and so on and so forth. One day, as the wind was again blowing through the vines, a bean had just fallen to the ground from the dry pod. With her last strength before she died, she stopped the wind in its tracks and asked, "Why are you doing this to us? Why won't you let us live forever green and young? Why do you beat us and dry us up, make us suffer and take our lives, never to be to enjoy this earth again?" Then the wind answers her, "Don't you see that I help you to be reborn, to multiply, to go through the beautiful stages of life, childhood, youth, old age, to always live your life differently, to never get bored, and to take advantage of the infinite possibilities. You never died, don't you see?" The beanstalk, a little nervously, looking around at the millions of sisters spread out on the ground, replied, "I don't think so. Don't you see how much suffering there is on earth? Leave us alone. This life is not worth living." She then closed her eyes and gave her last breath. Moral: are you the beanstalk or the wind? Let's imagine a virtual shooting game. If our character cannot be killed, is invincible, what would be the point of the game? Could you play the game over and over with the thought that no one could shoot you dead? Where would be the fun, the adrenaline, the fear or courage in the face of rivals, the pride of victory or the humiliation of defeat, the pleasure of being strong, the suffering in moments of weakness, the love of allies, the hatred of enemies? So it is in the game of duality. Death is a blessing to be able to enjoy life. Every morning the sun rises and the seen world, duality, begins to appear. Everything awakens to life and movement, play begins. Automatically, as night approaches, everything takes a break from movement, and so one enters the unseen world, singularity, the state of God. In conclusion, movement means life in the game, and at the same time God enters the character, and stillness means death. God returns to reality and leaves the character. If you don't want the balance of your life to tilt too far to one side and then get heavy weights to balance it out, then counterbalance it on your own initiative when it starts to tilt even a little. The fact that we are on this planet as humans and experience it as such is only one variant of the infinite possibilities of existence. There are certainly planets where life does not exist, or other smaller universes contained within the infinite megaverse, where aliens or other types of animals or planets of other shapes, sizes, etc. exist. For example, it is certain that if we make an infinite number of different combinations and arrangements, there are variants of universes in which planets are shaped like bananas or airplanes. I know it sounds funny or unbelievable, but any combination or scenario imagined by the personal or collective mind has the potential to be discovered and become reality. Remember, absolutely any combination of the infinite potential already exists. It just needs to be discovered and put into a certain contrast to be visible in the reality of duality. Unicorns, mermaids, cyclops, any other combination you can think of already exists in the vastness of the universe. Change and adaptation to these combinations is inevitable, because everything has a beginning and an end. Energy is in constant motion. When people avoid change at all costs, trying to stay in the comfort, convenience, predictability of the life they have become accustomed to, the universe forces changes to tip the balance of duality, and energy that had been stagnant is set in motion again by an explosion of unpredictable events such as wars, earthquakes, pandemics, and other natural cataclysms. The kingdom had organized a contest where the horse that proved to be the strongest will be the winner. There were no rules for participation. Any horse was welcome, no matter who it belonged to. The prize was a wagon and a piece of land on which to cultivate whatever they wanted. In the finals, two equally proud and beautiful horses of the same size, as if they were twins. One belonged to the emperor and the other to a poor fisherman, the animal being his only possession. At the final test, a piece of road was prepared covered with a layer of hot coals. The horses were left alone at one end, and their owners were waiting on the other side of the road. The start was given, and they began to step on the red coals. The fisherman's horse walked with difficulty and felt his hooves getting hot. He looked at the other one and couldn't understand how he didn't feel the discomfort and walked so proudly and lightly. The emperor's horse walked comfortably with his head held high. He looked at the other and did not understand why he struggled so hard, and his legs trembled with every step. They were aiming at each other with their eyes and reached the finish at exactly the same time. Both were declared winners. The emperor congratulated the fisherman and, looking at the horse's bloody hooves, handed him a bag of gold coins and said, "Your horse is actually the winner because mine had an advantage in the last race. Take these pennies and shoe your horse." Moral: you have to go through discomfort to understand comfort, and vice versa. In the end, both experiences are worth having. If you look around, it seems that things are not balanced at all. But when you step back and look at the big picture, you will notice that nothing is happening randomly. Everything just oscillates between balance and imbalance. For half of the world's nations to live in comfort and abundance, the other half lives in a constant struggle for survival. The comfort of some is built on the discomfort of others. During the period of slavery, this was very clear. Almost every kind of comfort of the wealthy was paid for by the suffering of the poor. Some relaxed in luxury and opulence on the cruise ship. Others suffered in the basement beside the burning engines and shoveled coals on the fire to make sure those above could enjoy the view. We can see this phenomenon in any type of gambling, sports betting, poker, roulette, mechanical games, etc. For someone to enjoy winning, someone else must feel the disappointment of losing. When a person hits the jackpot in a lottery, that win is actually the sum of all other people's losses. Although it may not seem obvious, no moment of comfort goes by without a moment of discomfort. In ancient times, the tribal emperor and his men fought to preserve their territory. Times were hard and food was getting scarcer. The women had no food to feed their children, and sadness was upon them all. They had hunted almost all the animals in the jungle except lions, tigers, elephants, and the other bigger and stronger animals. Seeing the desperate situation, the tribal sage wanted to speak to the king, asking if it was possible for him to join the hunt. Everyone burst out laughing, thinking, how could an old, weak man face the beasts of the forest? However, more to amuse themselves at his expense, the next day they took him with them into the heart of the jungle. Suddenly, an angry lion jumped in their path. They all started to run, each where they could, some through the trees, others back to their houses. Only one of them didn't flinch. The wise old man stood face to face with the beast, and as they looked eye to eye, he drew his dagger and plunged it straight into the lion's heart, which fell to the ground in a heap before the eyes of the king and the others, who trembled in fear in the trees. They all went down. Then the king approached the old man and said, "We are all fighters, but in the face of the beasts, fear makes us fearful, and we cannot control it. Where did you get such courage in the face of the most fearsome animal?" The wise man replied, "I am human just like you. The only difference between us is that I remind myself every day what fear is, and when its energy is exhausted, only courage remains." In his hut, the wise man had a huge stone tied to the ceiling with a rope hanging above his bed, right next to his head. In this way, every night when he went to bed, he would contemplate in fear at the thought that at any moment the rope might give way and the stone might crush his body. He would stay with this thought until the energy of fear was exhausted, and then he would fall asleep. The next day he awoke with only the energy of courage, which he could use in any action that required the absence of fear. Morale: you have to go through fear to understand what courage is. I think this is one of the most important dualities, as it may have the greatest impact on how we live our lives on this earth. Whatever the nature of the fear, spiders, drowning, fire, cramped places, etc., behind any of them lies the primordial fear that there will come a time when we will disappear and never, ever, ever appear again. The idea of death quickens the heartbeat for most people and often stops them from making the right choices to live the life they want. Then we ask the question, why does death frighten us? A higher level of this fear is the fear of the unknown, the uncertainty of what will really happen to us after our bodies give out. If we were certain that something beautiful would follow, all our fear in the course of life would disappear. But you'll find that this is not a healthy approach either. Will we go to heaven? Will we go to hell? Or will we go nowhere and be nothing forever? The reality is that none of these things will happen. The idea of birth and death exists only within the game of duality, within our life as a character. After our mission of knowing one scenario out of the infinity of possibilities ends, we return to our state of singularity, God, and from there we re-enter the game so that divinity can discover through us a new possibility out of the infinite potential of the infinite variations of existence. So after death follows birth and life again, it is an infinite cycle of self-discovery. Knowing this, people might choose, when they are in a situation of extreme fear that paralyzes them and does not let them continue, to get out of the game for a few minutes, remind themselves who they are and what the purpose of the game is, and then get back into the game with new strength so that they can experience and discover as many and as diverse sensations as possible. Another related issue is what many of us call the fear of God. It is this delusion of people that if they are not good and do not follow His word, they will be severely punished. In reality, there is no right or wrong behavior, good or bad, etc. The character will experience an infinite number of possible attitudes and scenarios, regardless of their nature. The only certainty of duality is that any action of man will be rewarded, balanced by the universe, with the opposite side of that duality in the same amount and intensity. For example, if you choose the courage not to wait for the fire brigade to come and rescue a puppy from a burning apartment, you will automatically trigger an event where you will cower in the doorway, in the face of an earthquake, to feel the feeling of fear at the same intensity. In order to enjoy the game, you need to experience these different feelings of bravery or dread to the fullest. And you can only do that by forgetting who you are and getting into character. If you want to have fun, don't play from the singularity state, because it has no charm. Eventually, you can only exit the game at the end of the day. Enter the creator state, contemplate on what you've experienced, and make a strategy for the next round.